Sport now. Leeds this afternoon defeated Wolverhampton Wanderers by 4-2 at Molineux with a hat-trick for Billy McLeod. There was no hint of the teams being affected by the latest scandal over illegal payments to hit the world of football. The league inquiry ordered Leeds City F.but to produce its books before next Tuesday or face disbandment. Now look at the main stories again. The Prime Minister has repeated his opposition to votes for women under 30.
Football has changed a lot in the last 75 years. Obviously, the stories surrounding it haven't. But the history of football in Leeds starts well before the headline-hitting stories that surrounded the Leeds City Football Club. Rugby had a very strong hold over the city of Leeds, even in those days in the 19th century, as it does today. Some footballing types had staged an exhibition game on Holbeck Moor. That was in 1877. There wasn't really much interest. Perhaps not surprising, they'd all come from Sheffield. Well, a few local teams briefly flourished and died, and then in 1894 a meeting took place at the Cardigan Arms to form the Leeds Football Club. Leeds AFC played their fixtures at Headingley, sharing the rugby club's ground, but the attendances were poor to say the least. In 1898 the annual meeting was to consider a scheme to meet expenses from gate receipts alone, but only 3 people turned up and the club duly folded. At the other end of the city, Hunslet FC were on no better terms with their landlord, Hunslet RL, then at the Parkside ground. The boot was on the other foot in those days. The rugby club wanted the football club out of their ground. And shortly after the turn of the century, they got their way. Hunslet FC collapsed for want of support. It was Hunslet's leading lights who formed the nucleus of Leeds City FC in 1904. And that club soon acquired an advantage its predecessors had lacked. Leeds City moved into the Elland Road ground, recently vacated by Holbeck RL, and football in Leeds for the first time had a home of its own. The first Leeds City company was formed at a meeting at the Peacock Hotel. The prime mover was Norris Hepworth, a local tailoring magnate whose name lives on in the city today. Leeds was up to that point the largest English city without a first-class team, and the new club found election to the Football League a formality. Hepworth's clothing business may have prospered, but his football enterprise didn't. Despite pouring in £20,000, a fortune of Jack Walker-like proportions in those days, the business went bankrupt. But this time the club kept going at Elland Road. Re-election to the league safely in the bag, it was business as usual. Under the management of Herbert Chapman, poached from Northampton, City improved dramatically. They finished 6th in his first season and the club turned in a profit of £400. At last, football in Leeds was paying its way. Better was to come. In 1913-14, City missed promotion to the First Division by a point and recorded their all-time best result in the league, 8-0 over Nottingham Forest. The First World War intervened before Leeds could build effectively on their progress, and the league closed down. Football continued with guest players such as England internationals Charlie Buchan and Fanny Walden, who both turned out for Leeds. They were supposed to receive expenses and nothing more. In fact, most clubs ignored the rule. And yet only at Leeds City did it cause a furore. And that's where we came in.
There have been further revelations in the Leeds City payments scandal. All day, the Joint Football League and FA inquiry have been in session at London's Russell Hotel. A few minutes ago, Football League Chairman Mr John McKenna made this statement to the press. The authorities of the game intend to keep it absolutely clean. We will have no nonsense. The football stable must be cleansed and further breakages of the law regarding payments will be dealt with in such a severe manner that clubs and players must not expect the slightest leniency.
So you see, there's nothing new in football, is there, Graham Kelly? The tribunal was hardly lenient. In fact, 5 directors were banned for life, so was the manager, although in the case of Herbert Chapman, his ban was later rescinded. Yet again, there was no football in Leeds. What followed was quite extraordinary.
The Metropole Hotel in Leeds was the scene today for football's sale of the century. Along with the club's goalposts, nets, physiotherapy equipment and other assets, the entire former Leeds City team was sold at auction on the orders of the FA. Leading scorer Billy McLeod fetched £1,250 going to Notts County. Captain John Hampson £1,000, whilst bargain of the day was Arthur Wainwright going to Grimsby Town for £200. The whole team fetched a total of £10,150. Meanwhile, the Lord Mayor of Leeds, Alderman Joseph Henry, has been speaking up about the so-called Leeds City scandal.
The FA and the League have been totally unreasonable about this. I offered to take up the running of the football club myself, but they wouldn't have it. Mark my words, lad, there's more to this than meets the eye. If Leeds are put out of the league, Burslem Port Vale take the place.
Are you saying that Port Vale have exerted some sort of pressure behind the scenes, Lord Mayor?
You may very well say that. I couldn't possibly comment.
The Lord Mayor's protests were to no avail. The tribunal's decision was upheld and Leeds City were history. Over 1,000 outraged fans congregated on the afternoon of the Metropole sale at the Salem Hall. And on the 17th of October 1919, it was resolved that a professional football club be formed. Leeds United was born. But the new team was almost strangled at birth. Huddersfield Town's chairman, Hilton Crowther, offered to up stumps and bring his team to play at Ellen Road under the Leeds name. The fledgling United committee were attracted by the scheme. After all, Crowther could bring with him Town's place in the Football League, and Huddersfield's players were willing. But the Terriers' supporters were not. Amidst uproar and legal complications, the scheme was dropped. So Leeds United gained an independent existence, and the following May topped the poll for election to the league in their own right. There was, however, one import from Huddersfield. Ex-Terriers manager Arthur Fairclough took charge at Ellen Road. There was no fixtures computer to blame for such ironies in those days, so perhaps it was a league official with a sense of humour who pencilled in Leeds United's first league opposition as none other than Burslem Port Vale. There was nothing funny about the result. United lost 2-0, but the new team improved steadily and by 1923-24 had a squad capable of winning promotion to Division 1 with 54 points. But life in the top flight wasn't easy. After finishing 18th in their first season and 19th the next, United were relegated again in 1927. Leeds were a yo-yo team throughout the 20s and early 30s. Dick Ray, a Leeds City veteran and amongst the founders of the new Leeds United in 1919, returned to the club as manager and engineered an immediate return to Division 1 in 1928. Willis Edwards and Ernie Hart were amongst the stars of Ray's team. They finished 5th in 1929-30 and the title began to look within reach. But in fact, that was the best Leeds were to achieve until the Revie era, and relegation again followed. Ray's side enjoyed comparative success in the FA Cup too. Their 1933 match against Everton at Goodison Park was United's first appearance in the 5th round. In April 1934, United equalled Leeds City's all-time best result with an 8-0 win over Leicester. Consistency, however, was lacking, and with his team heading for 18th place in Division 1, Ray resigned in 1935 to be replaced by another Leeds City veteran, Billy Hampson. Signing talented players such as Jim Toomey, David Cochrane and Bobby Brown, Hampson consolidated Leeds' First Division status, but his plans for development were wrecked by the war, as league football took a 6-year break. The post-war resumption divided the league into northern and southern divisions. United had the distinction of finishing bottom of the northern, but topped that performance the following year, finishing bottom of the reformed Division 1 with only 18 points, a record low which stood for 37 years. Not surprisingly, Billy Hampson stepped down as manager. He was replaced by Willis Edwards, a Leeds United legend with 417 league appearances to his name. Edwards had been signed from Chesterfield in 1925 for £1,500. The finest wing half of his day, he made 16 appearances for England and 11 for the Football League representative side. As a manager, however, he had no such success. Taking over at the end of the disastrous 1947 season, he failed to arrest the slide, and the following season United finished 18th in Division 2, avoiding 3rd Division football by a whisker. Edwards stayed a further 10 years with United as a coach, but relinquished the manager's job to Frank Buckley. Major Buckley was born in 1883 and brought a Victorian authority to the dressing room, as well as a massive reputation. An uncompromising centre-half as a player, Buckley had managed Norwich, Blackpool and Wolves, a side he'd steered from the 2nd Division to the FA Cup final and Championship runners-up. From there he'd moved to Notts County, where he was reputed to receive the massive salary of £4,000 per annum, and that in 1945. Then he went to Hull. A passionate advocate of youth development, a policy which had paid off handsomely at Wolves, he fearlessly sold ageing internationals Con Martin and Aubrey Powell, raising £20,000 to wipe out the club's overdraft and provide money to refresh his squad. There were no immediate dividends in the league, but in the FA Cup, what's this? Leeds in the quarter-finals? Indeed it was. United had beaten Carlisle, 1st Division Bolton Wanderers and Cardiff on their way to the 6th round tie against Arsenal. So, over 150 coaches travelled from Leeds to swell the 62,000 crowd at Highbury.
Wembley is really on the horizon. Leeds, who have never yet reached the final, went away strongly, and they were clearly determined to get through the Gunners' famous defence. They failed in this attempt, however, and the battle was still being fought out with determination by both teams. Then within 10 minutes of resuming play, the ball came in from the left and Lewis scored for Arsenal. This in fact proved to be the only goal of the match, though the Gunners, encouraged by their success, went all out for another. True, Logie netted, but the whistle went for offside.
Buckley did have unorthodox methods. He was reputed to make his team perform ballroom dance routines on the training pitch as music wafted from the PA system. And he gave his players monkey gland capsules. This brought him considerable ridicule, but no league success. He departed in 1953, perhaps before the fruits of his determined youth policy could be seen. That policy had brought to the club a 16-year-old Welshman, John Charles.
How do you know that you used to dances across the pitch? Yes, you had to dance across the pitch. Like you'd have you all running round, and he'd stop you and he'd say, right, take your partners and start dancing. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and they should go right across the field and back again. It was unbelievable, really.
And what about the monkey gland tablets?
Well, the monkey gland tablets, I didn't take them, but the smaller people took them. You know, he thought it was good for them, and how they took them, I don't know. You know, but it was one of them things that it was in his mind that these monkey gland treatments didn't play as well. They play better. I don't think it did, but that's what he thought.
Buckley was replaced with Horatio Rach Carter, a distinguished England inside forward. Carter had played alongside Sir Stanley Matthews. Carter made promotion his objective and reached it in 1956. Leeds were top flight again. But by now, Charles, the rock on which Carter founded his team, was restless. After one season in the 1st Division, Charles departed for Italy, bringing a world record fee of £65,000 from Juventus. Charles was blazing a trail many would follow later.
They looked after you very well over there for a start. And in the end, I loved it over there. No, it was absolutely brilliant. You had everything really, because you lived in every city you live in Italy. You've got the mountains in the winter if you want to go, and you got in the summer you've got the seaside to go to, which is all about an hour and a half, 2 hours away now. And the thing is that you had the money to enjoy it as well, and that was a great thing about it. And the football was well, I thought was terrific over there.
Back home, Carter received less than half the massive fee to reinvest in players. Form suffered, and after finishing 17th in 1958, the Leeds board declined to renew Carter's contract. Bill Lambton stepped up from coaching as a stopgap replacement. He spent only 3 months in the job, but in that time took a decision that transformed United's future. It was Lambton who signed Don Revie and made him captain. Revie had a brilliant playing career. Transfer fees for him totalled £80,000. He won 6 England caps. He was 1955's Footballer of the Year. And he earned universal acclaim as the tactical architect of Manchester City's 50s ascendancy. But now, all this was behind him. He added little to it as a player at Leeds. Lambton's successor as manager was Jack Taylor, who came from QPR. As the new decade dawned, Leeds slipped back into Division 2, and failing to bring about improvement the following year, Taylor resigned, with the year of his contract yet to run. The time for Revie was ripe. Chester City and Bournemouth thought so too. Both had inquired after the player a few days before Taylor's resignation. The future of a legend hung by a thread, with director Harry Reynolds, soon to take over as chairman, ready to see him go. But then it occurred to him that Revie might just possibly fill the vacancy at Leeds. Revie had no magic touch, however. His first full season in charge saw United finish 19th in the second division. But he knew he could afford to wait. The twin pillars of his super team-to-be were already there. Jack Charlton had made his debut for Leeds in 1953 and was already in his late 20s. But his best playing years were still ahead, as Revie brought out in him a spark of genius.
The big man was a great centre-half. And talking to somebody the other day, one season, when he went under the crossbar, you know, and he used to curl these balls under there, he went and he scored 17 goals one year as a centre-half. Now that takes a lot of doing. The big man was very dangerous in the opposing's box from set pieces and things like that. But a great centre-half.
Billy Bremner had arrived at Ellen Road in December 1959, destined to captain Revie's world-beating team. Bremner, in fact, considered leaving during the Don's early days. And in Leeds' youth setup at the time were Gary Sprake, Paul Reaney and Norman Hunter, all names that would shake the world of football in years to come. To these, Revie added his own recruit and arguably the most crucial signing in United's history, Bobby Collins. Joining a side again heading for the lower reaches of Division 2, he transformed United's performances. They lost none of the last 11 games of the season and finished 5th. Next season, with Sprake, Reaney and Hunter coming through the ranks, United were Division 2 champions and back in the top flight.
We never really thought that we would turn into a great side, because all you're concentrating on is working hard and trying to get signed as a professional at 17-year-old. And then once we did that, then Don Revie, Sid Owen, Les Cocker, they were and a fella called Maurice Lindley, who's dead now unfortunately, and Bob English. They were the ones who sort of trained us, saw the potential, and it just went from there. And I don't think there's many other clubs produced as many homegrown players as what Leeds United did through that period.
The story from then on is legendary. For a decade, United dominated English football, never finishing outside the top 5 in Division 1 and 7 times winners or runners-up. Regular visitors to Wembley, though only once winners of the FA Cup and League Cup, and twice winners of the Intercities Fairs Cup, forerunner of the UEFA Cup today. It was an era for Leeds of striking personalities and astonishing football. In their first season back in Division 1, United were league runners-up and defeated FA Cup finalists.
Could Leeds get an equaliser? 7 minutes later, Yorkshire fans forgot all about the rain. Billy Bremner put them level.
By now, Revie had added further to his squad. Giles, Madeley, Cooper and Lorimer were names now featuring on the team sheet. League runners-up again in 1966, United now began a determined onslaught on Europe, which took them to the Intercities Fairs Cup final in 1967. They were defeated, but the next year would bring their first real triumph. Some great weight had been lifted from their shoulders. Revie's Leeds went on to a second success only weeks later. European football had become a big part of life with Leeds United. Some of the biggest club names of all were toppled by a side fast gaining a reputation to be feared. And Ferencváros from Hungary were the ones beaten in the Fairs Cup final. United were now at their zenith, and the sun was to shine constantly for the next 6 years. Sprake in goal was exhilarating or exasperating. United's survival in the away leg of that Fairs Cup final owed much to Sprake's genius. But many remember his occasional lapses which unarguably cost United dear. 37 caps for Wales argue force breaks ability, as does the 1968-9 campaign, when Leeds as champions conceded the lowest number of goals let in by any title winner. Paul Revie was the complete defender. He was known for his goal-line clearances, often popping up from nowhere to save the day. But it was his lightning runs upfield to provide telling crosses that earned him the name Speedy. On the other side of the defence was Terry Cooper. Slow to find a place in Revie's squad, he was actually offered to Blackburn for £25,000. They thought it was too much. Later, Revie would describe as his worst nightmare dreaming that they'd accepted, and with justice. Within 3 years of finding a regular place, Cooper was playing for England in the World Cup finals and being acknowledged as the best left-back anywhere. Finding a place for Paul Madeley was never a problem. It was just which one to choose. Such was his versatility, he played in almost every position except goal in his 18 years with Leeds and filled most with distinction. Rejected by Arsenal and Chelsea as too small at 5'5", Bremner had by now won the first of 54 caps for Scotland and was about to be named captain of his club. Aggression, boundless energy, commitment and belief were all there in full measure, topped with a degree of skill that marked him out as an outstanding player. Charlton was partnered at the centre of defence by Norman Hunter, a pair more feared than any of the top-flight striking talent.
How did this sobriquet of bites your legs arise?
It was, we played Arsenal in the League Cup, and it was at the Leeds end. It was just this banner, Norman bites your legs. And funny enough, it just stuck, and it stayed with me, and then ever since, there's been competitions run for the best banners and things like that. And I've met these lads that actually produced that banner. I met them up somewhere at one sports club. But it's good to be known for something, and it didn't bother me at the time. But as you get older and apparently there's only one bites your legs, and that happens to be me.
Mick Jones joined Leeds in 1967 for a then club record fee of £100,000. Peter Lorimer was a prolific scorer to say the least, but almost seemed to spurn the easy kill for the more spectacular crowd pleasers. If Lorimer was the rocket launcher, Eddie Gray was the sidewinder missile, threading his way through defenders lethally to his objective. Johnny Giles had succeeded Bobby Collins at the heart of Revie's team after Collins broke his leg against Torino in 1965. Having left Manchester United to join Leeds, his was the zeal of the convert. There were still names to add to the illustrious roll of honour, but these were enough for now and formed the heart of the team that lifted the league title in 1969. The summit of English football had been scaled at last, and almost every record in the Leeds United book broken. Most points, most home points, most wins, most home wins, fewest defeats, unbeaten at home, fewest goals conceded, and only 9 in the Elland Road net. It was typical of Revie that at such a time he should feel the need to strengthen his team. There was money now at Leeds, and it wasn't stinted. To the already glittering firmament was added a new star, Alan Clark. The £165,000 fee was a Football League record, but surely this was one of Revie's greatest bargains. His nerveless detachment in front of goal earned him epithets such as the Assassin and the Executioner, as time and again he plunged the ball into the net with left foot or right, from close range or distance, with leaping or diving headers.
No, I've always said that, I was born with a gift, and that was to score goals. I think any manager or coach, they can't teach a lad how to score goals. It's a gift that, fortunately, I was born with. Obviously, you can improve in other aspects of your game. But I say, from as far back as I can remember, I always scored goals from the very first day I started playing football.
United as champions strode into battle on 3 fronts. A tough duel with Everton to retain the league title was drawing to an unsuccessful close. It had taken a second semi-final replay against Manchester United to reach the FA Cup final against Chelsea.
Goes to Alan Clark, whose header hits the post. Mick Jones cracks under the rebound, and for once, Bonetti's helpless. The 1970 Cup final ends in a draw. Will be at Old Trafford for the replay, when surely the Cup must be won.
Webb going in hard, and Clark beautifully getting past him and past Cook, and now Mick Jones. McCready trying to go in, and a goal by Jones! As Osgood goes in, a goal by Osgood! A beautiful long throw again there by Hutchins and Jack Charlton, and it's there!
The European Cup semi-final against Celtic was over within 85 seconds when the Scots took a decisive lead in this so-called Battle of Britain. United's titanic effort earned Revie his second successive Manager of the Year award, but hating Leeds had become a passion bred of envy amongst other teams' fans, and many talked of the Whites as a busted flush to be written off with the 60s.
We used to feel we were rated outside Leeds, and we often said that, but we often laughed about it because we thought, well, it's only sour grapes because we used to hammer everybody, we used to stuff everybody, beat them. So we thought it was that. Little do I know, since I've finished playing and I've got a lot older, as all the lads have, I bump into businessmen now, and there could be an Arsenal fan, there could be a Man United fan, there could be a Liverpool fan, and they say to me, "By Christ, what a team you played for." And I said, "Do you think so?" "Oh, I'm telling you." So we were appreciated throughout the nation, if you like.
The "We hate Leeds and Leeds and Leeds" chorus was given a fillip when in 1971 United were giant killed out of the FA Cup in the 4th round by 4th Division Colchester. But there was glory to be gained the next season in the old Fairs Cup, to be renamed the UEFA Cup the next year. Juventus, the crack Italian team, was the foe in the two-legged final. Leeds drew 2-2 in Turin, and those away goals were to prove vital. When the teams met again in front of a capacity crowd at Ellen Road, Alan Clark virtually assured Revie's team of a major trophy with his goal, beautifully struck. Juventus possessed a team of internationals, but Leeds, roared on by their fanatical followers, loved the great occasion. The Italians did salvage some pride, though, levelling the match on the night. A 1-1 draw, sufficient for Leeds to go on, though, and celebrate a significant triumph in their staggering progress under Don Revie.
Come on, Michael. Where is it? It's not there. Come here.
1972 will all...
Mick Jones crossing the ball. And actually when Mick crossed it, and he was arriving around about the penalty spot, as he crossed it, I thought, I'm going to volley this with my foot, and all of a sudden it started to dip, and I thought, well, I better take off here, because you only have a split second really to make your mind up. And I took off and dived, and he went in the back of the net, and a great feeling. As it turned out, it was the winner, and Leeds United had won the cup for the very first time and only time. And they're saying it was the Centennial Cup final, so yeah, that was special.
The campaign was just as remarkable. In the space of little over a month, Leeds defeated Manchester United, Southampton, Arsenal and Nottingham Forest. But such style was not enough to win another title. United failed to find the point they needed at Molineux, and the trophy went to Derby County and Brian Clough. 12 months later, United had slipped to 3rd in the league as a consequence of battling their way to both the FA Cup and Cup Winners' Cup finals. Both brought bitter disappointment. Underdog Sunderland triumphed at Wembley, whilst in front of a Greek crowd, AC Milan took a 1-goal lead over an injury-hit Leeds side and defended it with astonishing cynicism. It seemingly escaped the referee's notice. The referee, in fact, was banned for life afterwards. Rumours that Revie was about to leave the club were said to have played their part, but the Don was still there to marshal his team for the 73-74 campaign. David Harvey had already pushed past the more obviously brilliant but erratic Gary Sprague to make the #1 jersey his own, stolid determination making up for any lack of flair.
Gary Sprague probably, as a goalkeeper, had some of the most natural ability that I've ever seen on anybody. But Gary's problem was his concentration let him down, and unfortunately for Gary, every time he made a boob, it seemed to be on television, and I've got to be honest, it did get to him after a bit. But ability-wise, Gary Sprague could do the lot, but like I said, his concentration wasn't as good. Dave Harvey probably didn't have as much ability overall as a goalkeeper, but David was more consistent and more steady. Reflex saves and things like that. I've never seen a better goalkeeper than Dave Harvey, and brave, ever so brave. So they were both different goalkeepers, but both very good goalkeepers. And Gary probably let us down a little bit on certain situations where Dave never really did.
Now Gordon McQueen and Joe Jordan were to become regular stars in the Leeds Galaxy. Bought for just £30,000 from St Mirren, Anfield and Ibrox reject McQueen was to be the replacement for Jack Charlton, who retired in 1973. Joe Jordan had come even cheaper, £15,000 from Morton. His place in the firmament was to be that vacated by Mick Jones, whose years of crunching tackles and lunges for the ball had taken their toll. Thus refreshed, United streaked away, winning their first 7 games of the new season and taking an unbeaten record and a 9-point lead into the new year. The unbeaten run stretched to 30 games, and despite a wobble after that, United were already champions as they played their last game of the season at QPR. It was to be Revie's swan song. He was the obvious choice for the vacant England manager's job.
Oh yeah, he was the man. I mean, he stamped himself. You had this belief in this guy that when he talked to you, he had ideas, and there was just something about him made you think, he's going to do it.
His man management of all of us, when you think at one stage he had about 17, 18 internationals in the club, and he could get the best out of us.
And it was only really through Don Revie and his persuasive tongue that I came to Leeds United, and I was very impressed with him. And as I got a little bit older, I realised, the great knowledge he had in the game. He had a great knowledge of the game. He was great at getting the best out of players. But he was also very good with the families of players. He'd always look after them if things were going wrong. And basically at that particular time, I know football's changed a lot, he ran the whole club.
Revie had recommended his own midfield general, Johnny Giles, to succeed him, and who can say what might have happened had that advice prevailed.
No, I saw the chairman this morning and he said there'd be no decision until after the board meeting on Monday.
Instead, Leeds appointed Brian Clough as manager.
Well, when I came up this morning, it was absolutely pouring down, and I thought, well, I know I've been away a few years, but it doesn't rain all the time in Yorkshire. I'm certain when the weather improves and the season becomes, imminent, everything will be rosy.
Clough had always been an outspoken critic of United's remorseless style of play. Now he lost no time in laying out £250,000 to bring in Duncan McKenzie from Nottingham Forest and £125,000 for John McGovern and John O'Hare from his former club Derby County. Early results disappointing to say the least. The 3 defeats in 6 games were 1 fewer than in the whole of the previous season, and there was talk of dressing room unrest. After an emergency board meeting, Clough was sacked, just 44 days into the job.
Well, quite happily. We're leaving, parting company in a very friendly way.
Would you agree with that, Brian? I mean, how can you feel friendly about being sacked, or at least having your contract terminated?
I'm feeling very friendly towards Mr. Cousins. Everything is fine between him and I. I think it's a very sad day for Leeds. I think it's slightly sad for football.
Why?
Having said that...
Why do you think it's sad for football?
Well, the time involved...
I think Leeds are losing a very good manager.
Big head. I think that, that everything involved with Leeds is a little bit sad at the moment.
Brian Clough went on to prove what a great manager he was in the game. I mean, and my brother Frank, he played for Notts Forest and he played for them when they won the European Cup. So he was a very successful manager, but at that particular time it might have been the wrong time just for him to move into Leeds United.
Jimmy, one thing we'd strive to win the European Cup. We'd won the UEFA Cup and the Fairs Cup and all this FA Cups, League Championships, but the European Cup was the big one, and we were there in Paris and we played very well on the night. Alan was clean through and Beckenbauer brought him down 2 or 3 yards from goal with an open goal, and of course I hit the volley in the roof of the net, and we didn't get the goal.
Arfield now went about the sad but necessary business of discarding Revie's spent aces. Terry Cooper went to Middlesbrough. Johnny Giles as player-manager to West Brom, where he won promotion to Division 1 in his first season in charge. Billy Bremner to Hull City. Norman Hunter to Bristol City. In came Tony Curry from Sheffield United, Brian Flynn and Ray Hankin from Burnley, and from Aberdeen, Scottish winger Arthur Graham. Thus reconstructed, United began to show promise, reaching the FA Cup semi-final in 1977 and the League Cup semi-final the following year.
Houston, the big defender, has come up. And Hill with the in-swinger coming towards Houston, who gets a touch. Now Frank Gray and Jimmy Greener against his old club. Pearson jumping for this, getting there. Now Gordon Hill. And will it break for Koppel? It does! Steve Koppel! Billy Jordan up. With 3 men to beat, he's still the goalkeeper. And he's given a penalty. Jordan goes down. Mr. Reynolds points for the spot. Was the tackle from Nicol? Well, it seemed to play the ball, but Jordan went down. And halfway through this second half, Leeds have the chance to get back into this game through Alan Clark, who has taken 1 or 2 penalties before in tricky situations. I remember one on his first game for England in the 1970 World Cup, but surely nothing as tense as this one. Clark against Stepney, and by the goalkeeper, it's 2-1. And at last, Leeds have something to cheer about.
And only past achievements made United's league performances look lacklustre. But this was not enough for the fans, the board, or indeed some of the players. McQueen and Jordan took their ambitions to Manchester United in January 1978. In June, Alan Clark departed for management at Barnsley. And after 1 match of the 78-79 season, Leeds had another new manager. In Jock Stein, stepping down after an impressive career at Celtic, United had certainly landed a big fish.
Well, I know the people concerned about it. I know some of the players as well, and their ambitions, and for the high standard of football down through the years, and I think that my ambitions are just to get the team going again.
But there were other eyes on the catch, and before he could sign a contract, Stein had been offered charge of Scotland, which he accepted with alacrity, leaving Leeds after an almost fateful 44 days. Jimmy Adamson, a man offered the England job 15 years before, now stepped in and appeared to make an immediate impression, lifting the side to 5th in the league, their best placing since the 1974 championship. But his attempts at further reconstruction proved unsuccessful. Tony Curry had proved an immensely popular player, one of the few whose skills appeared to fans to be on a par with those of the bygone stars of the Revie teams. Now he was sold. Adamson's expensive additions to the side, Alan Curtis, Brian Greenhoff, Derek Parlane and Alex Sabella, between them costing £1.3 million, never found or earned favour. The dwindling crowds at Ellen Road demonstrated against Adamson, and in October 1980 he resigned. The board now turned to Alan Clark, the first of 3 stars of the Revie years to take the helm. He took charge of Leeds with the club 1 place off the bottom of Division 1 and concentrated on defensive improvements and, despite a poor performance in attack, managed a creditable 9th place finish.
But it was a big rebuilding job, and I wasn't talking about purchasing 3 or 4 players to make Leeds United a force in the country again, to challenge for silverware. There was 8 or 9 players having to be brought in, but obviously that generates and creates a lot of money.
Clark's answer to the goal famine was to sign Peter Barnes for £930,000 from West Bromwich Albion. But the move proved disastrous for both player and club. With only 39 goals scored in 1981-2, United finished 20th. The illusion was finally shattered. It would be second division football for the next 7 years.
People always blame the manager. I did the best job to my ability, with limited resources really.
Eddie Gray was the next to try on the Revie mantle as player-manager. Despite his inexperience, Gray skillfully and fearlessly set about dismantling the existing team, himself included. He retired in 1984, and he started building again. Obliged to sell expensive players to cope with the club's reduced circumstances, Gray brought on a crop of youngsters, including Dennis Irwin, Andy Linnigan and Scott Sellers. Repeatedly tipped for promotion and doubtless including talent enough to deserve it, United under Gray never quite managed to achieve.
You could say that, but the game has always been an impatient game. I mean, people always want success. I mean, the fans want success instantly. The directors, the managers, the players want success. I mean, and you accept that, especially at a club which is high profile, and for, you know, the 60s through the 70s, you know, Leeds United, a high profile club.
Gray's sacking on a 6-2 split decision of the board left a legacy of bitterness and upset. Under new boss Bremner, United slipped into the relegation zone before climbing to safety. Now there were further changes to the team. Linnigan was sold to Oldham for £60,000. Irwin followed him at the end of the season for a similar sum. Their fees when they moved elsewhere totalled over £1 million, and Botu requested a transfer and moved to Blackburn for £20,000. He would cost rather more to bring back. The young Terry Phelan, within 4 years to win an FA Cup medal with Wimbledon, was allowed to slip away on a free transfer. These moves, so disastrous for the long term, appeared to pay rapid dividends. The journeyman players Bremner brought in scrambled their way to the semi-finals of the FA Cup, where they faced Coventry at Hillsborough.
Edwards, 2-2. Oh, Edwards stole it from a hole in the ground. It's 2-2. Not long to go. Regis, Hookchin, Bennett, yes, 3-2.
Despite the cup disappointment, Leeds pulled themselves into a fourth-place finish, qualifying for the newly invented playoffs. Having defeated Oldham over 2 legs on the away goals rule, Leeds faced Charlton in the final. With a 1-0 win in either leg, the tie went to a replay at St Andrews. It was a heart-rending night for the fans, who saw their dream come close to fruition before being snatched away. Again the bookmakers' favourites in 87-88, United once more disappointed, finishing 7th. By October 1988 they were 21st and looking favourites for the 3rd division. Again the board acted, sacking Bremner and bringing in Howard Wilkinson from Sheffield Wednesday.
My main job now is to get Leeds United away from the foot of the 2nd division and eventually get them into the 1st division.
I think we like his integrity, we like his professionalism, and we like his directness. And I think that overall he's a man that can make a football club into something good.
I hope when we're doing well we can afford cups with handles on. Put it in saucer.
Among Wilkinson's first acts, regarded by some as sacrilege, was to remove the photographs of Revie and his players which had bedecked the walls of the now crumbling Elland Road.
Taken down until such times as the club had a ground and a team which was in almost every respect worthy of the man's name and of that team's name.
Sergeant Wilco, as he soon became known, had lifted United from 21st to 6th by February without any significant signings. But the challenge for a playoff place petered out and hopes were fixed on 1990. Wilkinson was not slow to show he meant business. Before the 1989 season was over, in came Gordon Strachan for £300,000. The transfer of the little Scot, considered over the hill at a glamorous club, had echoes of Revie's swoop for Bobby Collins a quarter of a century earlier. Along with Strachan's experience came youth in the shape of England under-21 defender Chris Fairclough from Spurs for £500,000. In the close season, the spending continued. In came hard man Vinnie Jones from Wimbledon at £600,000. Striker John Hendry from Newcastle for a similar fee. Mel Sterland from Glasgow Rangers, formerly at Sheffield Wednesday, again teamed up with his old boss. And 31-year-old John McClelland, a Northern Ireland international, came from Watford for £150,000. The big spending paid off. United swept to the top of the table, where they disputed the lead throughout the remainder of the season with Sheffield United.
Cracking goal by Sterling. ball. Good goal! Good goal, nice shot!
By way of insurance, Wilkinson added Lee Chapman to his squad in January, a £400,000 buy from Nottingham Forest. This, another old acquaintance from the manager's Hillsborough days. Promotion was clinched in the penultimate game of the season against Leicester City. United won again the following weekend at Bournemouth. With a club record of 85 points, equal with Sheffield United, Leeds were champions on goal difference. Wilkinson now set about building a team that could hold on to the prize so bitterly fought for. John Lukic returned from Arsenal for a £1 million fee, Chris White from West Brom for £600,000 and Gary McAllister from Leicester City for £1 million, signalling a change in style which was confirmed when Vinnie Jones moved on to Sheffield United for £600,000. Wilkinson had given notice of his ambitions, but even he could not have realised how soon they would be achieved.
In football, how can you be in football and not be optimistic? You would die 1 million deaths in one day if you weren't optimistic.
There was a hint in that first season back in the top flight when United finished fourth, but better was to come. Another summer saw Steve Hodge from Nottingham Forest, Rod Wallace from Southampton and Tony DeRigo from Chelsea joined for fees totalling almost £4 million. Added to the homegrown talents of Gary Speed and David Batty, now themselves players whose worth was measured in millions, Wilkinson had a formidable squad which by October had reached the top of Division 1 for the first time since the Revie era. There was one mid-season signing to help United on the way, that of the mercurial Frenchman Eric Cantona, who soon displayed talents enough to outweigh his reputation for being somewhat difficult to manage.
Eric Cantona trying to add a bit of French flair at the end, and that is exactly what he's done with a goal of class.
From then onwards, it was a leapfrogging race with Manchester United, which ended in victory for Leeds in their penultimate game.
Gannon's corner for Sheffield United. Leeds can't get it clear. Cork, he scored! Leeds will get the free kick there. Strachan looking to take it quickly. And does do so. There's Wallace. Speed now against Gale, and Wallace, it's in! Well, would you believe it? That's an absolutely astonishing goal. As he brought down. Well, you get the feeling the next goal is going to be vital. There's McAllister's free kick. Newsom! Oh, it's 2-1! John Newsom! Still, Sheffield United are causing Leeds problems. Here's another one of those Gannon corners again. It's back in off Chapman. Lee Chapman got the final touch there. Happy with the point at this stage, I think. It's 2-2, but the even snatcher winner. Cantona's racing on. Gale in there. He's needed up. He's headed it over. It's gone in. It's 3-2. The most remarkable goal. And it could just decide the championship. It's all over.
The city erupted in celebration. The stain had been wiped away. The glory years were back, they said, but the plural was premature.
Yeah, we did win it ahead of schedule, but you can't turn your nose up at that opportunity. Winning it when we did brought great pressure on us, and in particular on me, because we were expected to keep doing it, and and anything after that was going to be disappointed. And that can be a problem. Everyone in the building gave more than they were than could be expected of them to produce something for which we should all be grateful and rejoice. To do it again was going to be difficult, very, very difficult, unless we got a bit lucky. So we didn't do it again. But that's not to say we can't do it again in the future.
United's defence of their title was lamentable and ended in a scrape to avoid relegation. And despite performing miracles to defeat Stuttgart in the first round of the European Cup, United fell easy prey to Rangers at the next hurdle. Deprived of Mel Sterland by injury, Wilkinson struggled to find an adequate replacement. His new signings, David Rocastle, a club record at £2.2 million, and the returning Scott Sellers, failed to fit into the side. Away form in particular was disastrous. No wins throughout the entire season. And amid it all, the immensely popular Cantona departed for a fee of £1.6 million, which fans considered derisory, and to bitter rivals Manchester United as well.
Why I love you? I don't know why, but I love you.
The manager's judgment, inviolable only months before, was severely questioned. United bounced back to 6th place in 1994, however, and bettered that in 1995, with the aid of another multi-million-pound signing, Ghanaian Anthony Yeboah, to qualify once again for European competition. United are back, ready to make more history, and who can say what might happen in the next 75 years?